So a little bit about the Sustainable Energy Action Committee and who we are. I'd like to just give you a little bit of background. Some of you've heard this story before, some of you it'll be new, but really the Sustainable Energy Action Committee brings together this diverse group and a diverse group of stakeholders. And that's including authorities having jurisdictions, the local building and the fire departments, contractors, manufacturers, suppliers, utilities, testing labs, and other clean energy subject matter experts. SEAC is a national forum for collaboration and problem solving, and it's all related to codes and standards that are affecting the installation and use of sustainable energy systems and using solar PV systems, energy storage systems, electrical vehicle charging infrastructure, and much more. We try to address all of the topics that are on the forefront of inspectors, installers, and manufacturers. You know, when you think about SEAC, we started back in the early 2020s, 2015, 2014. We started out of the county of LA. This was, SEAC was a brainstorm by Mustafa Cache out of the county of LA. And he had this great idea, hey, let's take all these individuals, let's take all these AHJs, let's take manufacturers, let's take testing companies, let's take everybody, put them in a room, and let's talk about things that are hindering the process of permitting renewable energy. What a great idea. What a great concept. We began to grow that concept, started talking about things that were really affecting California at that time. Those people that live here in the state of California, remember back in 2015, we had new laws passed by the state that are mandated to the AHJs. You will now issue a permit for solar systems, 24 hours, 3-day maximum. You will have one inspection. And so that was a big thing for a lot of jurisdictions. Wow, we got to permit this in 24 hours. Wow, they're only going to allow us to have one inspection. What if that inspection doesn't pass the first time around? So we had to address these kind of issues, and getting all the people in the same room and addressing this was a great thing for SEAC. This was some of the first things that we began to work on. One of the other things that were really complicated back in this period was UL 2703. UL 2703 was listing your module with a racking system, listing that module for grounding and bonding, mechanical loading, and fire rating. But what we soon realized that not all companies were listing it the same way. Some companies were only submitting information to get listed for a fire classification, or some were only listing for the mechanical loading. Some were only listing for grounding and bonding. And so we got all the people together, including UL and industry leaders, and talked about things that could help jurisdictions understand these two concepts that were on the forefront in California. So from 2015 to the early 2020, SEAC was really just a California-based initiative. Everything we did was based on what was happening in California. But when you start looking at the spring of 2020, SEAC has expanded into this national forum that you see today. And that national forum was led by IRAC with support of a grant from the United States Department of Energy, the DOE. So now SEAC leads a nationwide consensus process and we're still identifying and developing solutions to code enforcement and permitting challenges. That's really our mission. That's what we're here for. Some of the key partners in this endeavor within SEAC were there in the beginning and are here now. And some of those key partners are like the Independence Alliance of Electrical Industry, better known as the International Association of Electrical Inspectors, IAEI. The International Code Council, ICC, they're one of our key partners. UL Solutions, the National Association of State and Fire Marshals, NASFM, the Solar Energy Industry, SEIA, the California Solar Storage Association, again, all key partners. I didn't take time to name every one of our partners, but these are key partners and that have been in the process of development of SEAC from the very beginning. I want to take a moment. Are there any founding members from SEAC that are on the call today that were here in the very beginning in 2015? Can you raise your hands? Some of the founding members. Okay, I see a couple raised hands. I want to thank those people for being here in the very beginning and being here all the way through it. I appreciate that. So these founding members felt a commitment to begin way back then and are continuing today. And I just want to say thank you to all of you. So SEAC, when you look at it today, SEAC continues. We're continuing to develop consensus-based solutions to high priority codes and standard needs. And how do we find those needs? Well, we conduct analysis to determine the gaps that exist out there. We conduct analysis to understand what we can do to implement new guidelines, new information bulletins that would help the code enforcement industry, the clean energy industry, in deployment of renewable energy. That's what we're doing here. The process is really led by the SEAC General Assembly. So when you think about how developed to work to produce these guidelines and the products that we produce, these white papers, they first are produced in the working groups. These working groups then take those guidelines, those white papers, and then they're presented to SEAC General Assembly. Now, the Assembly is a diverse body of individuals. We have individuals in all interest categories, again, testing, manufacturers, contractors, AHJs, and there's no single interest group category that represents more than 1/3 for the voting members in this assembly. So these products they go to the assembly. The assembly will hold a meeting. They'll use this consensus process to either approve or deny the work that has come from the working groups. Once that information has been approved through the General Assembly, then the Assembly forwards that information on to what we call the Steering Committee. The Steering Committee is here to guide the operations of SEAC. The Steering Committee will look at these guidelines, these proposed white papers, and once they're reviewed and approved by the SEAC printed out and posted on our resource page on the SEAC's website. So again, start with work groups. The work group work goes to the assembly. then goes to the steering committee. Once it gets approved from the steering committee, it's posted online under our work and resources. I would encourage everybody here, if you have not been to the SEAC website, to go to the SEAC website and look at all the resources that we have now that are available for AHJs, homeowners, designers that really can help you in the process. So really, that's our goal. Is once we provide clear and comprehensive procedures and defining permitting, inspection, and other requirements for the solar and solar plus storage projects, we then post them on the site. And again, I encourage you to go there, look at all that information. We think that we have a ton of information. We're constantly updating that information, but we need your help to get that information in the hands of the people that really, really need it. So I'm counting on you to get involved and to help me in that process. Next slide, please. So what has SEAC done to date? Well, just recently, I can give you some information. So the code development process, we've submitted 27 SEAC proposals for the 2024 international codes. And we had a 74% success rate during that. We submitted 12 public inputs for the 2026 National Electrical Code. We submitted proposed modifications for the newly published 6th edition of UL 9540A to address the large-scale fire testing, or the LSFT. We submitted 12 code proposals, code change proposals, and 50 positions which SEAC held for the 2027 international code changes. And through that cycle, we've had over 90% a success rate. So again, you can see here, we get involved in the code process. We're not just sitting here complaining that we don't like what's going on, but we're being part of the solution to the process by producing these code changes and these proposals. That you can see that we have a pretty good success rate. Some of the communication that we have recently, we have monthly email newsletters that are going out to over 2,000 subscribers. We have an audience of over 620 LinkedIn followers, and that has been that website launched in 2022. And then we have over 2,700 users in the last quarter that has visited our website looking for some of those resource papers that I told you about. Next slide, please. So today we're going to talk a little bit about AHJs and the process getting AHJs involved and the importance of AHJs. And so today we have, I'm happy to present Doug Harvey. Doug Harvey's been a regulatory engineer with UL Solutions for the last 3 years. It seems like longer than that. He has added so much to UL, but even with SEAC, he's added just so much information. And I know that his working group is constantly producing a ton of information. So prior to Doug joining UL Solutions, his prior involvement, he was an AHJ, where he held numerous roles, including primarily as a building official. He has served as the executive director of the Building Officials Association of Florida, and he's been involved in code development process for many code cycles. Doug has been instructing classes, and I'm going to say not just here with SEAC, and we've used him a lot here, but he has requests all over from different industry professionals. And I know he's traveling around at different IAEI chapters and giving presentation, and they want him because of his knowledge. He's a great subject matter expert, not only as the background as a building official, and can give us great information on his role as an AHJ, but again, all the work that he's doing with the working groups and the different people that he is out presenting with. We appreciate you, Doug, and all that you do. And I'm going to go ahead and turn the rest of the time over to you. Thank you, Doug.
Thank you very much, Steve. It's truly an honor to be here and be with you all and to be asked to be able to provide some of this information. I have found my time with SEAC to just be invaluable. Back when I was sitting in the big chair as a building official is when I first got involved with SEAC. And it's hard to believe it's probably close to 7 or 8 years that I've actually been somewhat involved, or at least using the resources that SEAC offers. And I bring this up at many of the presentations that I do and tell people that this is the website you want to go to. This is where you need to go to get the information that is going to help you do your job. So what we're going to talk about today is how SEAC can really help support the roles and responsibilities of the AHJs. The AHJs, and it goes beyond the AHJs. I shouldn't end it there. We should actually say roles and responsibilities of the AHJs, the contractors, the designers, and even property owners. I have had conversations with owners that have asked about, things that have been installed in their home where they really didn't get training on what had been installed. And I have sent them to the SEAC website for oftentimes the documents that I'm intimately familiar with. I do, as you said, Steve, I do chair the storage snapshot work group. And over the years, we've put out a couple of documents that try and educate people on things like disconnects. One of the infamous issues that has come up, and I've been one of those inspectors that has actually gone out to a job site, and I have asked the electrician to remove disconnects because there were just too many of them, and it made the entire job much more confusing. So in one of our documents, we actually tried to explain the difference between a disconnect and an isolation switch, and when one device could serve both purposes and help make the job look cleaner, make it more aesthetically pleasing for the owner and people that may be visiting their property, as well as to make it less confusing for when first responders have to go to that property. One of the things that we have found over the years is that pre-planning gets to be one of the most important things that we can do. And I'll use my personal house as an example. I have a PV system on the roof. I have a BESS system on the wall. I have a generator input. I have the utility grid all coming in. And when you first walk over and you take a look at it, because I had an electrical service prior to adding the PV and the BESS, it looks like 4 main disconnects on the side of the house. There's only one electric meter. Well, what disconnects what? And I've actually had to label things and try and explain, and it goes beyond disconnect 1 of 4. No, that's not what it is. One of the signs says this disconnect only shuts down the utility grid. And then one of them says to shut down the premises wiring system, use this disconnect. So trying to make it easier for people. And that's part of the responsibility that an AHJ has. The roles and responsibilities of an AHJ vary greatly from state to state, oftentimes even within the same state, just going from one jurisdiction to another. And things are very different in a number of states. And I'll use California and Florida, two ends of the country that are very similar, but also very different. In California, you have electrical and fire that are both involved when you're involving PV and BESS. Well, you go to the state of Florida and things change because Florida Statute 633, which is the fire safety statute, actually says that fire inspection personnel are not to be involved on 1 and 2 family residences. They don't go to the property. That can create some problems with some of the systems that we have today. So we have that diversity. And the information we're going to look at today, I give you that example just in order to put this into perspective. We're not intending to provide legal advice here. And please do not take it as such. There are a lot of items where we have to be consistent. And the responsibility of the AHJ is really to help provide a safe built environment using our certified and approved products and systems in accordance with the locally adopted rules and regulations. One of the most difficult things to explain oftentimes is when we talk about the building code. Over the course of my career, cannot tell you the number of times I have been told, well, it meets code. Okay, I can't argue with that. What you have to understand about the building codes, when you read what the building codes are, and if you've never gone into the front of the ICC codes and read the preface, I would recommend that you do. The way that the codes are adopted and what the codes are actually all about, the codes are a minimum standard. They've often been called remedial. Well, you use that term remedial and it kind of gets people's attention. But when we talk about the codes and standards in most cases are the absolute minimum standard that you are permitted to legally build a structure to. That's not the way most people look at the building codes. They look at the building code and the fire code, and they think that is the gold standard. No, it's not, folks. It's the base. And that is why the codes all have a statement in them that says, hey, it's okay to exceed what's in this book. You are not going to have a problem doing better than what's here. So with that in mind, let's take a look at what we're really trying to accomplish. What we want to do is we are trying to garner the AHJ's interest and to get your participation. For those of you that are AHJs, we need your participation. We need your input. There are numerous code discussions where that input is invaluable. You are on the front line. You are seeing it. You are hearing it. There has got to be consensus building. And that takes us right back to the code development process. The way that the international codes are developed, they are a consensus-based document. The AHJs vote on the code. And there's a very good reason that that process has withstood the test of time. The AHJs do not have a financial interest. They are not there to sell a product. The AHJs are taking a look at code proposals and asking, does this proposal improve the code Does it make things safer and yet still keep the code as the minimum standard? We all know there are things that could be put in the code that would improve the code. But is it really necessary for the minimum standard? And the inspectors, the plans examiners, the building officials, the fire officials, they're really the only ones that are not attending the code hearings that are there to not sell a product, that are there to not say, well, yeah, the code's okay, but this would make the code better. Well, is it necessary? What is wrong with what's in the code right now? So AHJs, we need your participation. We need you to get involved. Help with that consensus building. We're going to try and highlight some of the SEAC resources for you. Some of the stuff that's out there that you can utilize that can help support you with knowledge of products and systems that already exist in the marketplace. One of the things you have to understand about the codes is that the codes are not current with technology. You know, we have the 2027 codes are basically written. They're out there. The drafts are out there. Well, when are you going to adopt the 2027 in your jurisdiction? It most likely, there's only a couple parts of the country where it's going to happen. Most likely, it won't be on January 1st of 2027. So we are behind. It takes 3 years for us to adopt a code. And that technology is probably been in the works, the research and development, the testing, the proving of that technology took years to occur. So the code is behind technology. And if you can come up with a better way of doing something, if you have a newer product that will perform the same function, or perhaps even do that function better, that is why we have the alternate methods and materials availability. It's in the building code. It's in the energy code. It's there. So please don't be afraid. And also, we're going to try and provide a platform to address questions related to codes and standards. That's one of the things SEAC does. We always ask for input. You heard Steve ask just a little while ago for training that's going on so that we can make people aware. Where can you go? Where is that platform that's available? Where can you submit a question and get an answer to things that you wonder about? So SEAC is here to help provide knowledge, to help give you the background, the understanding of products and systems, to provide a platform to help you advance your career, get more information, and be current. As an inspector or a plans examiner or a building official, no disrespect to the plans examiners and building officials by having inspector on here. It's just one of the first things that you usually think about when you're going out into the field. Some of the things that an inspector needs to know and a plans examiner needs to know. Well, we need to know about the building. Whether you're just doing electrical, you may only be doing electrical. Maybe you're only doing mechanical. There are things you need to know about the building. What is the occupancy of the building? Whatever system we're working on, does it affect egress? Everybody is a building inspector. Everybody, it affects everyone. And I tell electricians all the time, to realize why you need to know a little bit about the building volume. Where do you put exit lights? Where do you put emergency lights? I've had electricians tell me, oh, that's easy. Chapter 700 is our emergency systems. You're right. That tells you how you wire them. That tells us how we get the electricity to them. Where do they have to be located? Exit signs are section 1013 of the building code. So you need to know a little bit about it. That impacts egress. How about fire safety? You need to know, is that a fire resistive rated wall? Can anybody tell me what the fire resistance rating of that wall is behind me? I use this office every day. I can't tell you what the fire resistance rating of it is because it was built before I got here. So there are things that we need to know and things that we need to understand. We have special conditions, and then there are always materials that we need to look at. Can I install that in this occupancy? You need to think about it. On the electrical side, we need to be thinking about our wiring methods. We can't necessarily run a PVC raceway inside of an area that is used for environmental air. So we need to think about our wiring methods. Bonding and grounding. Bonding and grounding are two of the most misunderstood items in the electrical industry. I just got done doing a class and we spent a long time talking about bonding and grounding, the difference between bonding and grounding, because they're not the same thing. You need to have that understanding in order to know what you're doing with it. Disconnects, fire protection, all fall in the electrical. How about energy? Well, our alternate systems today are helping us meet our growing demand for energy. We did a document on the electric vehicles. Okay, whether you're an electric vehicle owner or lover or not, it doesn't matter. They're a part of life today. And many people are using their electric vehicles as a two-way electrical source now. They use it to, or they take it and plug it in and they charge it up, or they take and they plug it in and they draw off of it. In some cases, you plug it in, and when you have excess electricity, the system will automatically charge it. And if there's a drop in power, it'll take electricity from the vehicle. So we need to be aware of all of that when we start talking about our energy budgets. Commercial buildings today are given an energy budget. You're only allowed to use so many VA per square feet based upon your occupancy. Well, SEAC has information about energy usage, control systems, the forms that are required, the calculations that have to be done. And then there's this other one, flood. You know, I tell people all the time, if you haven't been paying attention for the last 20 years in construction, the two big buzzwords are energy and flood. We're seeing more flood than we have seen in a long time. Just turn on the news. It's hard to go more than a day or two without somebody talking about a flash flood that just occurred somewhere within the US. So flood is a big issue. When we're installing systems, we need to be thinking about it. Are those batteries or is that PCS located in a flood zone? How far up do you have to go to elevate it? Oh, now you need a working platform in front of it. These are all things we need to be thinking about. And if you're not a certified floodplain manager or you haven't been involved in a lot of the flood discussions, you may have some misunderstandings. There are a lot of unknowns out there. Just like the codes change, the flood zones change. They get updated based upon things that happen. So there are unknowns out there. And then we've always got the big one, the local regulations. Well, local regulations. Generally, a local regulation can't make something less stringent. Ordinarily, the only thing a local regulation can do is make something more stringent based upon local conditions. It might be hydrology, it might be topography, whatever it's going to be based on. It's because there is something unique in that particular area. Okay, outsiders are unaware. One of the things about this country is we are very mobile. Contractors work in multiple jurisdictions. Many contractors work in multiple states. A lot of your national companies have 1, 2, or 3 crews that go throughout the country and build all of their facilities. AHJs, they are educators. AHJs become the educator for people that are coming into the jurisdiction or people that haven't done a whole lot of work or just plain haven't paid attention to what's going on. So AHJs, you're educators. So question, are inspectors licensed or certified? Well, the answer to that is yes, no, sometimes, maybe. It depends on where you are. Requirements vary. In some areas, you may only get one inspector who's going to take a look at everything. In some areas, you may go in and because you were working in one jurisdiction yesterday, and then you crossed a boundary line today, and you went in and you were asking for a permit to do a certain amount of work, and they look at you cross-eyed, say, you don't need a permit for that. Well, I did yesterday. Oh, you must have been over in Joey's jurisdiction. Yeah, man, he requires a permit for everything. So requirements vary. And sometimes the inspectors are not even required to be licensed. They may not even have to have an ICC certification. It depends on where you are. In some areas, you not only have to have the ICC certification, you have to have a license from the county or the state in order to be able to do the work. And you have to have licenses in every trade that you're going to be looking at. So you're bound by Chapter 1 of the adopted code. When you look at Chapter 1 in the base code, and it just a little tangent here, just something to keep in mind. A lot of people get confused about the base code. Well, the base code is what is referred to as a model code. The International Code Council is a model code. The model code is not necessarily intended to be adopted as it is written. It's a model code, meaning that it knows a little bit about a lot of things. It doesn't know what your topography is. We have areas where you've got wind that comes down the side of the mountain. And as that wind comes down the mountain, you don't think you're in a high wind zone, but you are because that wind gains speed, it gains momentum as it comes down the mountain. And when you get down to the valley, you're in a protected valley. You're surrounded by mountains. Well, when the wind gets down into that valley, that wind is really rolling along. And you're in a high wind zone that may require a different type of bracing than where you were yesterday, which was on the plateau. You were on a nice flat piece of land yesterday. It's different. You have to install the system differently. You have to give it different bracing. You have to really take a look at what's there. So Chapter 1 of the adopted code gives the building official under the model code a lot of power and authority. It says the building official is responsible for everything. And the building official can go ahead and assign things to other people, but it doesn't know about your specific adoption process. Typically, that will be included in there. Then we get into state laws. Some states, as I said a few minutes ago, require inspectors to be licensed, or in some cases, they only have to be certified. They have to have an ICC certification or some other type of certification. ICC is probably the most common. There are other certifications out there. You've heard a lot about the Independent Alliance of the Electrical Industry, IAEI. IAEI has an inspector and a plans examiner certification program. That's accepted in some jurisdictions. It's not accepted universally. Then you've also got municipal law. Sometimes the inspectors are just governed by the city or the county, and that is where their power comes from. So where to get all the information you need is critical because nobody knows it all. Don't be afraid to ask questions. So code adoption, we've already talked a little bit about the adoption process. We've talked about what happens at the international level and at the state level. This is oftentimes where that hydrology, the topographic information, your wind information, your climatological information. Do you have heavy rains? We have certain parts of the country that maybe get 50, 60 inches of rain, maybe 80 inches of rain a year. And then other parts of the country that don't even get an inch of rain a year. It's different climatology. You do things a little bit differently. Some areas get a lot of snow. Snow can be very heavy. In fact, just this past year, I remember seeing stories about a couple buildings that collapsed because of the snow load on the roof. There are other things that enter into that. So the model code gets modified from locale to locale based upon your adoption process. It might be a state adoption, it might be a regional adoption, or it might be a local adoption. So the codes, the model codes are intended to be modified. And the edition that people are on varies as well. We still have some areas that are still using the 2008 National Electrical Code. Has the electrical code changed since 2008? Yeah, if you're doing solar work, if you're doing PV or you're doing BESS, or especially if you're doing a diversified electrical system with a power control system, a PCS, some of that stuff wasn't even approved for use back under the earlier editions of the code. It's not even addressed. So the next question, are codes law? Maybe. In some areas, they carry the power of law. In some areas, there are bodies that adopt the codes, maybe at the statewide level. And sorry, I just had a pop-up come up on the meeting. In some places, you have a body that adopts the codes. They make the changes to it for your region, and then they adopt it. Now, what happens with it after that? There are some areas where it goes to the legislature, and the legislators actually do adopt it as a law within that state or that zone. There are other areas where it may get adopted as a rule. You have a controlling body that is authorized by the legislation, they're authorized by the statutory authority, and they are governed by the rules of the statute. They get told to actually adopt the code for whatever area it might be. And then when they adopt it, it's adopted as a rule. Well, does a rule carry the same weight as a law? It depends. It depends on where you are. That's a legal question. I am not an attorney and cannot give you legal advice. And I didn't even stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night. It was actually a Hampton Inn. So you have to find out how much authority and power the codes carry in the jurisdiction that you are working in. Okay, can there be penalties for noncompliance? Oh, yeah. And a lot of it goes to what I just said. Depends on your adoption process. Your adoption process determines whether there are financial penalties or whether you may actually be charged civilly or criminally for violating the code. So what's the purpose of having codes and updating them? Well, the real purpose here is pretty straightforward. It is to ensure the health and general welfare of the public. It's to make sure that the buildings that people use and live in are safe to the best of our ability. Purpose of updating them is real simple. Technology changes. Our knowledge of things that we do changes. We do things a little bit differently than we did 30, 40 years ago because there are things that we've learned. There are things we're not allowed to do today that we did at that time because we've learned. Who needs a building code? Let's go back to the Code of Hammurabi. Many of you may be familiar with Hammurabi. He was a king way back when, and he had a bunch of rules. It's really the first evidence that we have of a written building code. This was part of his building code. If a builder builds a house for someone and does not construct it properly and the house falls in and kills its owner, then that builder shall be put to death. How's that for a building code? No wonder some of that stuff is still standing, right? So what we have today, this is what I've been saying to you a couple of times here. This is out of the International Building Code, Chapter 1. Purpose of the code is to establish the minimum requirements to provide a reasonable level of safety, health, and general welfare. And then it goes on to say how we do that. It's not the gold standard, folks. It's the minimum requirements that are necessary for those items that are called out. So responsibility, when it comes to responsibility, inspectors, plans examiners, building officials, they have a heavy weight on their shoulders. I refer to the building department personnel as the silent protectors. The best thing that can happen in a building official's career, you're never on the news. Very few people even know who you are because that means nothing went wrong. When a building department is on the 11 o'clock news, it is very seldomly for a good reason. So you just kind of keep that in mind, that nothing is approved until the building official says so. And when we look at the definition of approved, it calls that out. Acceptable to the building official. The building official has the authority to go ahead and render interpretations of things for compliance with the code, to go ahead and adopt policies and procedures on what type of information is necessary to know if something's going to be approved. But the kicker is the very last part of this. Such interpretations, policies, and procedures, number 1, shall be in compliance with the intent and purpose of the code. We just read the purpose, folks. And number 2, shall not have the effect of waiving requirements specifically provided for in this code. The code is a minimum requirement. The building official doesn't have the authority to say, you know what, I don't agree with that. We're just not going to enforce it. No, they don't have that authority for determining compliance. The code is a minimum, and they have a responsibility to ensure that it's enforced. What's that mean? Well, that means the building official's got to be pretty knowledgeable. Where do you get that information? Because not every building official knows everything there is to know about everything. And no matter how much continuing education you're taking, you probably haven't heard about 10 or 12 of the new products that just hit the market. Well, SEAC Resources, one of the best places you can go to get information on things. We have information out there, and there are QR codes here. If you would like more information, the next couple of slides that we're going to go through have some QR codes on them. Most AHJs have gained considerable experience with rooftop-mounted PV panel systems, solar modules, the racking, the mounting above an existing roof, attachments. Does that system require an attachment to a rafter or a truss, or do you have to go underneath and provide additional bracing for that? BIPV, or building integrated PV, where we now have shingles that generate electricity. It's a fraction of the residential solar market. The requirements in the building codes, the requirements in the safety standards are not well known when it comes to their permitting, their installation, and their inspection. The growth of more commercially successful BIPV roofing products, we're now seeing awnings that are part of our PV system. They're part of the BIPV. We have a lot of different things that are going on, a lot of new materials that are coming out and hitting the market. Well, where do you get information on those? SEAC is one of the best places to go to get information on anything that is PV. Your existing inspection procedures, we've actually covered in the permitting guidelines. We've talked about inspection procedures. What is it you need to know ahead of time? We have one for permitting so that you can advise the customer. Here's what we're going to be looking at. There's a whole nother document you can see on the right-hand side of the screen. Residential BIPV roof coverings, roofing and electrical inspection checklists. Well, whether you are the inspector, the designer, or the installer, wouldn't it be nice to know what the inspector is going to be looking at? There's your documentation for you right there. Hopefully everybody had time to get those QR codes if you wanted them. Here's another one. This has become huge in recent years. SEAC provides technical resources and training related to the fire safety when deploying these systems and pre-planning that fire needs to do and how our documents can help. If you are using portable systems, there are limitations on these systems. There are a couple of systems out there on the market today that are actually being sold as being able to be daisy chained. Or there's a couple of systems out there that talk about how you can put multiple connections and tie into your electrical system. Folks, you need to pay attention to how these things are certified. How did they come out of the testing lab? What were they actually tested for? In many cases, your portable BESS is limited to 20 kilowatt hours. It's not intended to be daisy chained up to a 180 kilowatt hour unit. So you need to understand how they are there. Fire, when it comes to a number of these units being on a property, fire needs to do some pre-planning. Somebody needs to contact them and let them know, hey, here is what we're planning to do. We want to let you know how much lithium-ion battery or how much lead-acid battery we're going to have on this property so that they know. These units have rapidly evolved in the recent years. It's really difficult for consumers, contractors, and AHJs to understand how they fit into the existing landscape. In some cases, they're plug-in units. There may not even be a permit or any electrical work that is involved with them. Or in some cases, you may call over to the building department, you talk to the electrical permitting specialist. You go, hey, I'm thinking about putting in a portable battery system so that if the power goes out, I can plug some stuff in. Do I need a permit for that? They say no, because what they're thinking is you've got a little roll around unit. It has receptacles on it. And if the power goes out, you're going to take this thing out and you're going to unplug the refrigerator from the wall and you're going to plug it into this unit just like you would with a UPS. No permit required. Well, you forgot to tell them. This actually requires me to put in a transfer switch and to go ahead and connect it into my electrical panel. And I'm not exactly sure what their instructions mean. Hold on, now we got a different situation. Okay, so another one, the temporary portable solar. This has gotten huge. We're seeing legislation in many states that is being done for these units. Legislation that is being put out there that says, hey, building departments, fire department, you're not going to tell people no. You're going to permit these. Often in the legislation, there are requirements in there, such as it must comply with a given UL standard. Well, up until recently, there really wasn't a US standard for them. There's an outline of investigation, a UL 3700, that I saw was actually being talked about earlier in the chat. Some of the manufacturers are trying to get their units certified to that outline of investigation and show them as safe for whether you call it BIPV or PIPV or plug and play or plug in solar or the name that came from Europe, balcony solar. Whatever you're going to call them, there's information out there on them today. And that QR code will take you over to a document that we just recently completed and is now posted on the SEAC resource website that will help you with these. There's also a UL white paper that talks about breaker masking and talks about some of the potential issues if these items are not properly installed. So you can get that information. There's actually a link right in the document that will take you right over to that UL white paper, which has a lot of safety information. So testing is underway for these units. They've made their way into the US market. Many of them are certified for the European market. Europe uses a different electrical system than the US does. The stuff that is suited for the European market is not necessarily suitable for the US market. Please keep that in mind. The rules need to be applied, and we're going to continue to evolve and improve. SEAC encourages the use of only certified systems. Please realize that. Not pieces and parts. This is not the kind of a thing where we are going to condone people going out and just building their own little unit, buying a solar cell, and then grabbing some wiring and getting an inverter and then putting a cord on it and plugging it into the wall. No, please don't do that. These need to be certified, and the system needs to be listed and installed in accordance with the manufacturer's instructions to ensure fire and life safety. So to summarize, I know we're taking a lot of time here, and I want to keep this moving forward. So AHJs, we all know you need to be knowledgeable. There is so much information out there today and so many new products. Please keep in mind, you also need to be a little bit flexible. We have a lot of new products, and I have heard plans examiners, or I've heard people at the counter tell people, designers and contractors, when they've come in with something, well, that's not in the code. When it's in the code, you can come back and talk to me. Today, you really need to be a little bit more flexible than that. And something else, we all need to be referring to the information. We need to be attending the IAEI section meetings. You need to get involved and be attending your local IAEI meetings, because we need to build in that consistency. We shouldn't be hearing from people in this day and age. We shouldn't be hearing from people, well, I didn't have to do it that way yesterday, or, next door in the next county over, they don't make me do it that way. We should be more consistent than that. And when we attend the local meetings, we work together, we get educated, we become aware. And there is all this information out there that you can use. All you have to do is get it. So the SEAC website is one of the best places that you can get this information. Here's my contact information at UL Solutions. We have a team. I am part of the CARS team, the Codes and Regulatory Services. We are here to support the industry. So if you have questions that we can help you with, and I don't have all the answers, I haven't seen every piece of equipment that's coming out on the market today, but I generally know who to direct you to or who to call. Or depending upon what part of the country you are in, I'll get you involved with our representative in that part of the country. So with that, I thank you very much. Steve, thank you very much for the time. And I will stop my share and turn this back over to you.
Thank you so much, Doug. I appreciate your expertise. I appreciate the way you presented the material. Thank you again for all that you do. I appreciate it. I hope that there were people out there, as you had that last slide up, that were taking down your contact information. Because believe me, Doug is a wealth of information. If you didn't get that contact information, maybe he could put it in the chat there again. I hate to burden you with a lot of contact, but Doug is very good resource. Keep him in your Rolodex. All right. Again, thank you so much, Doug. Appreciate that. Let's go ahead and move forward a little bit. We do have a quick presentation from Wrishija. That if you want to bring that up, Wrishija.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. I know we're approaching the end of the meeting time, but this is just a some brief slides talking about another resource, a program that is also administered by IREC, similar to SEAC, and it's called Energy Ready. I'll go 1 second. Steve, this is sharing, right? I just want to make sure since I'm host, it's...
Yes, you're sharing.
Okay, great. Okay. So first, a quick acknowledgement disclaimer that we include in our slides. Energy Ready, similar to SEAC, is a program supported by the Department of Energy, and it's jointly administered by the Interstate Renewable Energy Council, IREC, who you know is hosting and administering these SEAC meetings. Similar to SEAC, it is part of our local initiatives pillar right here in the middle, where all these programs are specifically targeting cities, counties, and towns, ways that we can assist them in driving the growth of clean energy technologies. So Energy Ready itself is a suite of a few different technical assistance programs for local governments. They are all free programs. Our most well-known one is Soul Smart, and another one is Charging Smart for EV charging. We're slowly ramping up Distributed Wind Smart as well. These all provide guidance and free technical assistance. Along with IREC, the ICMA, or International Cities and Counties Management Association, helps to lead some of these programs. And the main goal is all to reduce soft costs and remove barriers that come with deploying these clean energy technologies. Just wanted to, I know Steve already touched on some of the partners for SEAC at the beginning of the presentation, but here they are again. All these partners, including SEAC, do help to advise programs like Soul Smart, and that'll be the first one I highlight briefly. So Soul Smart, like I mentioned, a free technical assistance program. The goal is to streamline permitting and inspection processes, to help adopt solar in local communities. So this is a map of all of the communities throughout the U.S. that are designated under Soul Smart. There are over 600 across 44 states and counting, and over 1 in 3 U.S. residents live in a Soul Smart designated community. Soul Smart provides customized support and technical assistance that is based on best practices, including best practices developed and advised on by SEAC. These resources and technical assistance, it's tailored to each individual community and includes webinars, trainings, and materials such as the ones I'll touch on in this next slide. So Jeff, at the beginning of the meeting, for anyone who is here, he talked about the National Simplified Residential PV and ESS permitting guidelines. That is something that SEAC's Standard and Efficient Permitting and Inspection Working Group, along with Bill Brooks at Brooks Engineering, have been working to update with recent codes. But these are resources that have been out for a few years now, not only permitting guidelines, but also inspection guidelines. These include step-by-step checklists with the aim of streamlining these processes at the local level for residential PV and ESS. These ensure compliance with code requirements from the NEC, IBC, IRC, IEC, and they aim to help inform plan reviewers, inspectors, as well as installers, various roles across the AHJ level. Some additional resources, one of these also getting updated, as Jeff mentioned, is this technical commentary document that goes along with the permitting guidelines. It kind of explains the engineering principles that make up the foundation of the checklist. There's also a detailed analysis document of the structural aspects of these permitting, the permitting checklist. I'll briefly touch on the designation program that goes along with SolSmart. So there are standard pathways to designation. The levels include bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. And there's a set of criteria with points associated with each criteria. When you complete a certain task or fulfill a criteria, you achieve points. You get to be designated like the 600 plus communities throughout the US. And why SolSmart? So everyone needs a permit to construct and install technology like residential PV, and there's training for local officials which can ensure the safety of installing these technologies. It is one of the few programs that provides free technical assistance, and the only program that provides it customized to local government staff alongside training and best practices endorsed by partners like those that were mentioned earlier. And yes, and first and foremost, just emphasizing the role of local governments in the clean energy transition. The AHJs are critical players in the policy that's as we move forward. Another quick program, the Charging Smart, it is similar to SolSmart, but it is focused on electric vehicle charging and supply equipment for electric vehicles. It is also a free technical assistance program. We have over 90 communities throughout the US that are receiving technical assistance, over 95 that are designated, and these numbers just keep growing. This is just a slide from the city of Sonoma in California, which is one of our designated communities. Mentioned in their feedback, it helped them identify specific goals that could further the development of EVSE, and the staff providing the technical assistance really helped to streamline the process in a smooth, understandable way. The categories for designation, similar to SolSmart, it's divided into categories like planning and utility engagement, education and incentives, and there's criteria associated with each of them. You can, similar to SolSmart, the designation levels include bronze, silver, and gold with points associated there. And yeah, the benefits of a program like Charging Smart, it removes unnecessary barriers. It helps to leverage staff capacity and funding, decrease soft costs, a lot of similar ones that were associated with SoulSmart. I'll just sharing my information here, as well as the Energy Ready website for anyone that is looking for more information on either of these programs. I know this was a pretty brief presentation just to highlight them, but lots of information is available on the website. You can also follow the LinkedIn, and these are also some additional QR codes that where interested AHJs and communities can sign up to show their interest in designation. And we'll be sharing these slides as well as Doug's slides with all the attendees after today. And of course, this whole meeting was being recorded, so you all will also be able to access that in the coming weeks. And yes, thank you all so much for giving me the time.
Thank you, Wrishija. That was a lot of information in a very short period of time. Sorry that we didn't allot you a whole lot of time, but thank you for that. And I hope that people will take you up on looking into the SoulSmart for their cities. I know that when I worked with the city of Oceanside, we began the process, and then we started working with Toya and working with IRAC on the process, and then I left and got hired with UL, and I think that process died in Oceanside. But I think it is a good process. It's good to be acknowledged for a city that you're going up and beyond. And so if there's some of you out there, some AHJs out there, I would encourage you to bring this to your building official, bring it to your planners, bring it to your city manager, and maybe they would help you get these incentives activated in your city. So good. Thank you so much, Wrishija.